Okay, hello Jessica. This is your first video lesson. I was hoping we got to do this in class, but here we are. So in the first part of this unit, 2 weeks ago, okay, I asked you to flip some coins, okay? So on Monday we will compare that data and see if there's any correlation, okay, between the weight of the coin and how many times we got heads or tails, okay? So when you come in on Monday, I'll have a couple larger coins, we'll compare our data, and we'll see if there's any correlation. If any, there might not be one, all right? But remember the difference between the two, okay? But depending on the data we compare, you know, maybe the weight does, maybe there is a correlation, but also maybe the weight of the coin causes it to go heads or tails, all right? Maybe the, you know, the head side is a little heavier than the tail side, so therefore it, you know, you get tails more or something, all right? So we'll look at that data and we'll talk about whether or not there's a correlation and whether or not there's any causation, okay? So we'll have a look at that data, and now we'll go back and talk about probability, okay? So the whole point of this unit was to kind of get you looking at some probability things, okay? So coin flip, right? When you see probability, a lot of times it has something like this. So it's like probability of, you know, and let's say like heads, right? Or probability of tails, okay? This is how a lot of times you'll see these things, or at least maybe you've seen them in the past, right? So the two possible outcomes, right, are either heads or tails, right? So those are our two possible outcomes, right? So the two possible outcomes, heads or tails, right? Which means, all right, that since there's only two options, we have a 50-50 chance of landing on heads or tails, right? And so the probability of getting a head is 1/2, right, or 0.5. And the probability of getting tails is also 1/2, or 0.5, right? You got a 50-50 chance, right? So we flip the coin, right? What's the chance of us getting one head? Well, that's 50%. All right. The next one, flipping one tail. All right, since there's two outcomes, all right, you have a 50-50 chance. So again, 0.5 or 1/2. And so this is where probability starts to get a little tricky, right? So what are the chances of flipping two heads in a row? All right, so a lot of times students will be like 50%, okay? That's not how probability works. So you have to multiply your original probability, right? So we got our first coin flip. We have a 1/2 chance of getting a head, all right? And now when I go to flip the coin again we have another 1/2 or 50% chance. And when I multiply these things together, I get 1/4 or 0.25. So the chances of flipping a coin and getting two heads in a row is 0.25. And we found that by multiplying our two numbers together here, or our two probabilities, right? And if you think about it, right, this is where they're coming up with this. So we flip a coin, heads or tails, right? Flip it again, we can get heads or tails. Same thing down here. We can get heads or tails. So as you can see, how many possible outcomes do we have when you flip a coin and then flip it again? We actually end up with 4. There's two different paths. We can get two heads, we can get a head or a tail, we can get a tail or a head, or we can end up getting two tails. So that's why we have 4 1/4, right? Because there's 4 different outcomes for that. All right, so same thing when we flip two heads. 1/2, all right. The probability of flipping another head or another tails is 1/2. So again, we're getting 1/4 or 0.25. And as you can see, right, if we go up to these paths here, all right, there's one path that can take you to two heads, and there's only one path that can take you to two tails. All right, and so that's where we're getting up to that 25%, right? Because we're only 25% of the total outcomes. Let's look at 3 heads in a row. Okay, following that same process, I go 1/2 times 1/2 times 1/2. So I get 1/8 which is equal to, don't know off the top of my head, 0.125. Okay? Also, if we were to multiply 0.5 times 0.5 times 0.5, okay, so we go 0.5 times 0.5, whoops. Okay, we end up with 0.125. So however you would like to think about things. I leave them in fraction form because, well, you'll see why down the road here. So leave them in fraction if you can, if that makes sense to you, because it'll help your answers in the end. So let's go back to this though, right? So why do we have 1/8 outcomes, right? Well, let's think about this. Okay, let me zoom in here. So we got heads and a tails, right? So we flipped a coin. Heads or a tails, heads or a tails. All right, now we flip the coin again. Heads or tails, heads, tails, heads, tails, heads, tails. Again, we have how many outcomes? 8. Okay? So that's where they're coming up with these numbers. But the rest of this multiplication isn't, so 1/2, so we want 4 heads in a row, so it'd be 1/2 times 1/2 times 1/2 times 1/2. I get 1/16, which is 0.0625. So the chances of you flipping 4 heads in a row is 6%. Okay? That's where that comes from. All right, let's talk about foul shooting. All right, so hopefully you're familiar with basketball. All right, and when you get fouled, you go to the foul line. And so what a lot of schools will look at is they'll look at someone's foul shooting percentage, right? Because these are kind of easy points. So let's say my foul shooting percentage is 0.85 or 85%, right? I'm not bad, okay? I have an 85% chance of making my shots, all right? So my first shot, right? I go to shoot. What's my chance of making it? 85% or 0.85, right? Okay? Second one, 2 in a row, right? So following what we did up there, I go 0.85 times 0.85. And by doing so, my average actually drops down to 72.25. So the chances of making me 2 shots in a row are 72.25 or 72.25%. Okay? 3 in a row, same process. Whoops, 0.85. Now my average is down to a 0.614, all right, or 61.4%. Okay, that's the chances of me making 3 foul shots in a row, just based off of my shooting percentage or my shooting average, right? When it comes to foul shots. Okay, 4 in a row. All right. Well, same process. Okay, so multiply by 0.85 again, and I get 52.522 or 52% chance. Okay, or 52.2, sorry. Okay, so I have a 52.2% chance of making all 4 of my foul shots, even if I have an 85% chance of making, if that's my shooting average, right? If I shoot 85% of my shots, if I make 85% of my shots, to shoot 4 in a row, okay, means your average slowly starts to go down. Okay, so let's look at the probability of what you will miss. All right, so what is the probability you will miss on the first shot? Well, in this case, all right, if my shooting average is 85%, that means I have, here's how you find it. You go 1 minus 0.85, which means I have a 15% chance of missing my first shot. Okay, which isn't that large, Should make me feel pretty good. And then what is the probability you will miss the first and the second shot? So it's going to be 0.15 times 0.15. You get 0.225, right? So the probability I will miss the first and the second shot is only 2%, okay, or 2.25, which isn't bad, right? Not a bad shooting percentage, all right? And then you can keep going down in order to figure out the rest, all right? So here's the last part. We're talking about dice rolls, okay? So list the possible outcomes of a dice roll, right? So if I got one dice. We're just doing one dice, right? So our possible outcomes are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay, we're just going with a simple 6-sided die. Okay? And so I didn't really specify. We're going to roll 1, right? So I'm going to roll 1. So the chance of me rolling a 1 are a 1 out of 6 chance, right? Because I have that many outcomes, so I have a 1 out of 6 chance of rolling a 1. Okay, what if I want to roll 1 2 in a row? Okay, well, 1 6 times 1 6 is 1 over 36. You have a 1 over 36 chance, okay, of rolling 1 twice. Okay? Now, as we think about this, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Right? So if I rolled a 1 once, and I went to roll again, I'd have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay? 6 outcomes here, 6 outcomes there, 6 outcomes there, and 6 outcomes there as well, right? You roll the dice twice. Okay, so in all of these we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so on and so forth. Okay, and so if we were to count all these up, we would have 36 different outcomes. So that's where these numbers are coming from, okay, your denominators. All right, if you're wondering why there's 36 under there, it's because when you roll the dice twice, we actually have 36 different outcomes based off of what we started with. Okay, so as we continue on here, 1 over 6, 1 over 6. This one's 1 over 6, 1 over 6. Okay, and so this one's going to be 1 over, can't think right now, 216. And this is 1 over 1296, which is equal to point. So that's the chances of you rolling the same dice, that same roll 4 times in a row. Okay? So anyway, and now we're on to the homework problem. So for homework, I want you to try all of these problems. So we're talking about beanbag throwing, we're talking about bowling. Okay? So, I forgot to put an average in here. Shoot. I'll have to change it when I send the document. But the percentage, I'm going to go with a 95% chance. Okay? So your strike percentage is 95. Okay? All right. Good luck, Jessica.